President Biden's State of the Union address on Tuesday comes as a new poll from NPR PBS NewsHour and Marist has his rating at 39%, the lowest of his presidency. That same poll also asked Americans what the Biden administration should be prioritizing. Inflation was overwhelmingly the top response. Notably, the investigation into the January 6th Capitol riot and abortion came in lower than people who said they were unsure. Even voting laws, which stalled in the Senate, only had 11%. Here to discuss everything is John Hart, a GOP strategist and co-founder of C3 Solutions. He was also the communications director for former Senator and Representative Tom Coburn. Thank you so much for joining us today. We'll get to those poll numbers in just a moment. But first, I just want to know, what do you expect to hear from President Biden at the State of the Union? Obviously, a lot of events are going on right now that were not necessarily happening when this was first scheduled.
Well, Lindsay, thanks for having me. You know, as a former speechwriter, I've written quite a few major speeches, and this is a big challenge and opportunity for President Biden. He can go a couple different directions. The typical State of the Union, as we've all heard many of them, is a laundry list of primarily domestic policy asks that seeks to navigate, the politics of the moment. But the challenge is to really understand what is the zeitgeist, if you will. It's a German word that means the mood of the moment. And the mood of the moment obviously has changed dramatically since Vladimir Putin decided to invade Ukraine, and now he has his finger on the nuclear button. So the mood is completely shifted. And I've having talked to some folks in the administration, I think there's a consensus that he's going to throw out his first draft. And I think that's a wise move on his part, and hopefully we'll see a completely reshaped, reframed speech, and not just a couple paragraphs about Ukraine shoehorned into a typical laundry list of domestic policy asks.
Right, it ties into everything now. And as I mentioned before, those poll numbers of the president's and how tied it is to the economy. How do you see those numbers coming together on what's so important to people and how it leads to President Biden's lower approval rating?
Well, I think the way that what I hope I don't hear what some Democrats are saying is that because of Ukraine, we're going to have inflation. That's a very weak and intellectually dishonest causality argument. We had spiking inflation long before Ukraine. And is being as impartial as I can be, it's the consequence of COVID, but also, dramatic overspending and an influx of liquid assets, government spending from borrowing. And, I would argue that's not a terribly sound way long term to get the economy moving again. But he's going to have to speak very directly to what people are feeling. Is not obviously the anxiety of Vladimir Putin with what he's doing in Ukraine is rightfully going to be top of mind, but inflation is right there with it. And this is an opportunity to really have what I would call a reset, almost a second inaugural speech where he can speak to different factions, the Reagan realist faction, but also the Joe Manchin centrists who are now really on the ascent and have been empowered because of what's happening in the world today. And just, again, the typical list of I'm going to spend this money on this project, going back through the Build Back Better initiative, which is largely dead, I think would be a big mistake and a missed opportunity for President Biden, to hit reset.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that reset, particularly important for him as we head towards the midterm elections with a evenly split Senate, of course. But CPAC, let's talk about that for a moment. The Conservative Action Conference wrapped up today, even 2 years out from the next general election. Can you give us some context on how important CPAC is to gauging who the next GOP nominee for president may be?
Well, look, I've been to quite a few CPACs. I haven't been in the past couple of years, and CPAC is really has been an important meeting, but it's becoming more important for a certain faction within the Republican Party that's chosen, I would say, to put fealty to Donald Trump ahead of fealty and loyalty to the Constitution. So there's a very big and dramatic split. I come personally more from the constitutional conservative wing. I worked for Tom Coburn for years, Jim DeMint. We bristle at being accused of being establishment. In fact, Coburn was the most anti-establishment member, I would argue, in the past 30 years, and he was very effective at refocusing the Republican Party around traditional ideas about the size and scope of government, less spending, lower taxes. And I think that's really where the argument is. And so I think CPAC has gotten off track. Matt Schlapp, I don't like criticizing Matt. He's a friend of mine. But I think when he gave an interview and backed off the word conservative, that was a mistake. I understand what he's trying to do to broaden the appeal. But I think, as a party, we did really well when we had an actor who managed to speak very effectively to the American people named Ronald Reagan. And we're seeing that model right now in Ukraine, where you have Zelensky, who is a comedian, being a statesman. I think the problem in the GOP today is we've had so-called statesmen who want to act like comedians and entertainers. And it's completely out of step, again, with the zeitgeist, the mood of the moment, is that people don't want to be entertained right now by their political leaders. They want to be led, and they want to see courage. They want to see people put their lives on the line like we're seeing in Ukraine. And so there's a silliness to our politics that I think people are just tired of. As a Republican, I'm tired of it on my side. And I think, we need more leaders who are willing to call for reform internally and not just partisans who point out the flaws on the other side. I love a spirited debate. I think conservative ideas will beat liberal ideas anytime in a free and open exchange. But I think we need to move beyond the Trump years and look to the future.
All right. Look to the future indeed. All right. GOP strategist John Hart, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Lindsay. Appreciate it.